Hello, grade 4. Today we will talk about the human respiratory system. Human respiratory system, it is a system for breathing or respiration. Respiration process, we get oxygen and remove carbon dioxide during breathing. Why this occurs? To get energy. We breathe and eat to get energy. So blood distributes oxygen and food all over the body to get energy. Why we get energy? Because oxygen and digested food mix together or burn together to get energy. Carbon dioxide gas and water vapor. So respiration process, it is a process by which human obtains or get energy from burning food. Burning food, it is a respiration process. Why respiration process is very important? Because it is a process by which human get energy from burning food. Human get energy from burning food. So respiration process is very important. So blood transports oxygen and digested food to each cell inside your body, because inside the body oxygen and food burns together or mix together to get energy. Burning here, it's not like a fire. Burning means mix with oxygen or react with oxygen to get energy. We respire to get energy. We respire to get energy. So respiration process, it is a process by which human obtains or get energy from burning the digested food. We get digested food from the digestive system. Excellent. This process occurs in special organ. Group of organs make a respiratory system. It means a respiratory system consists of organs such as nose. Number one is nose. Nose is the first organ in the respiratory system. After that, pharynx. Pharynx also in the digestive system. We said that pharynx is a common cavity between digestive system and respiratory system. In the digestive system, it leads to esophagus. In respiratory system, it leads to trachea. This tube called trachea. Notice that CH, not a like school. CH, not ch. Chemistry. Also start with CH. Trachea, it is a tube for air or for breathing. This trachea divided into two tubes called two bronchi. Divided into two tubes called two bronchi. Each bronchi for a plural, but the singular one bronchus. One bronchus, two bronchi. One bronchus, two bronchi. Each bronchus divided into small bronchioles. And these bronchioles inside the lungs. So respiratory system consists of the nose, pharynx, trachea, lungs. Trachea, bronchi, and lungs. And there is a muscle under the lungs called diaphragm. Also notice that the G is silent. The G letter is silent. So it's called diaphragm. Diaphragm, not diaphragm. It is a diaphragm. These muscles separate the chest cavity and abdominal cavity. This is abdominal cavity or your tummy or your tummy. Chest cavity, this is your chest cavity or your thoracic cavity. So respiratory system lies in the chest cavity or thoracic cavity. Let's identify each organ. First, the nose. Nose is the first organ in the respiratory system. We breathe by nose. Also, we can breathe by mouth, but it's not breathable. It's not breathable. It's breathable to breathe by nose, not mouth. Why? Do you notice that your nose contains mucus? Your nose contains mucus and hair. There is a hair inside your nose and lined with mucus. Why? To filter air before entering the lungs. If I give reasons, nose lined with the mucus layer and hair to filter air before entering lungs. Nose lined with mucus and hair to filter air before entering lungs. Filter air from what? From dust and microbes. All of that have a filter inside our home. Why? To filter water. The same. Nose contains hair and mucus layer to filter air from dust and microbes. The air around us contains a lot of dust and microbes. So, hair and mucus filter air from dust and microbes before entering lungs. Also, it surrounds or lined with a small blood vessels. Blood vessels mean tube, blood moves inside it. Small or tiny tube or pipe, blood moves inside it, so it called blood capillaries. Blood capillaries. Why? To warm air before entering lungs. Also, this is an important reason. So there are important reasons here. Nose lined with mucus layer and hair layer to filter air from dust and microbes. It lined with blood capillaries to warm air before entering lungs. So it is preferable to breathe from nose, not mouth. Give reason. It's also give reason. In this case, we write the both. But the answer will be what? Because it lined with a mucus layer and hair to filter air from dust and microbes before entering lungs. Also, it lined with blood capillaries to warm air before entering lungs. After the nose, there is a pharynx. Do you notice the pharynx? It is a common cavity between esophagus and trachea. It leads to esophagus and leads to trachea. Esophagus for food, trachea for air. It means that pharynx is a common cavity between esophagus and trachea. Trachea in the respiratory system, esophagus in the digestive system. So it is connecting to trachea in the respiratory system, connected to the esophagus in the digestive system. Let's identify the other parts. A nose lined with a hair and the mucus to filter air from dust and microbes. So we breathe from nose, not with mouth. Also, it lined with the blood capillaries to warm air before entering the lungs. Pharynx is a common cavity between digestive system and respiratory system. Let's talk about the trachea. Trachea, put your hand on your neck. What do you feel? Do you feel there are rings? طب these rings like a bones or like a muscles? It is a soft bones. It's not bone or not muscles. It's like a soft bones, so-called cartilaginous. So these bones called cartilaginous. Cartilaginous rings means a soft bones. Means a soft bones. These soft bones, why? The air can open the trachea to enter the lungs? No. So we need the trachea open all the time to allow air to enter the lungs. To keep this trachea open all the time, it's supported with a cartilaginous rings. It's supported with a cartilaginous rings. يبقى give reason the trachea supported with cartilaginous rings. Why? To keep it open all the time. To keep it open all the time. Okay? So this cartilaginous rings, not complete rings. It's incomplete rings. Why? We said before the trachea beside esophagus. So the esophagus in this space, it is a muscle to allow food enter the esophagus and not feel hurting during swallowing the food. So this rings is incomplete cartilaginous rings. These incomplete cartilaginous rings, why? To keep the trachea open all the time. To keep the trachea open all the time. يبقى first, trachea supported with incomplete cartilaginous rings to keep it open all the time or permanently open all the time. Okay? The second part, at the top of trachea, there is two things. First called larynx. Larynx or voice box. Larynx or voice box. This larynx or voice box, put your hand on your neck. What do you feel? A vibration. This vibration is from the voice box or larynx or larynx. يبقى at the top of trachea there is a larynx. There is a larynx. This is the larynx. So it's called what? Voice box. Also there's at the top of trachea epiglottis. At the top of trachea epiglottis. Epiglottis. This epiglottis. Why? We said the pharynx is a common, this is a pharynx. A pharynx is a common cavity between esophagus and trachea. It leads to esophagus and trachea. During swallowing the food, why the food doesn't enter the trachea? Because there is an epiglottis here to close trachea during swallowing, to prevent food entering the trachea. So the epiglottis at the top of trachea give reason, it's important, give reason to prevent food entering the trachea, to prevent food entering the trachea, or to close trachea during swallowing. The food doesn't enter the two lungs. Why? Or doesn't enter the trachea? Because there is an epiglottis at the top of trachea which closes trachea during swallowing. During swallowing the food. At the top of trachea, two things. First, epiglottis, which closes trachea during swallowing, and larynx, which is a voice box, and also trachea, supported with incomplete cartilaginous rings to keep it open all the time. Also, trachea lined with cilia. Cilia like a tiny hair or like a small hair. This small hair or tiny hair called cilia, to eject up or get rid of strange objects like also dust and microbes, to filter air. there is a cilia which ejects up strange object, So trachea lined with cilia give reason to eject up strange object. يبقى to eject up strange object. Give reason. Trachea supported with incomplete cartilaginous rings. Why? To keep it open all the time. طب why the food doesn't enter the trachea? Because there is an epiglottis at the top of trachea which closes trachea during swallowing. Also at the top of trachea there is a larynx which is a voice box. يبقى trachea at its bottom divided into two tubes. Trachea at its bottom divided into two tubes. Each tube called bronchus. Two bronchi, one bronchus. يبقى trachea divided into two bronchi. Each bronchus divided into small bronchioles. Trachea lined with cilia to eject up strange objects. So, trachea at the top of it, there is an epiglottis which closes trachea during swallowing, larynx which is a voice box lined with a cilia to eject up strange object, and it divided into two bronchi. After that, each bronchi ends with the lungs. Do you notice that in this picture? Each bronchus divided into small bronchioles like a tree. This is a trachea like a tree. This is the stem of the tree, and the tree divided into a bronchus, and each bronchus divided into bronchioles. These bronchioles ends with air bag or air sacs. These air sacs or air bag called alveoli. One air bag called alveolus. يبقى singular alveolus, plural alveoli. These alveoli make the lungs or inside the lungs. يبقى trachea divided into two tube called bronchi. Each bronchus divided into small tubes called bronchioles. Each bronchioles ends with a small or tiny air sacs or air bags called alveoli. Okay, these alveoli surround with blood capillaries. The blue and red inside this figure called blood capillaries. Blood moves inside it. طب why? We said blood distribute oxygen to all body cell and take waste like carbon dioxide to get rid of them in exhalation process or during breathing. So this is exchange of gases occurs inside the alveoli. Exchange of gases occurs in alveoli. What happens during this exchange of gases? Blood gives the alveoli carbon dioxide and get from this alveoli oxygen. يبقى exchange of gases take place or occurs or happens inside a alveoli between air in the air sacs or air in the alveoli and blood in the blood capillaries So the air sacs wall is very tiny. طب the lungs occupy your chest cavity. or thoracic cavity. The lungs also surround with ribs. It's a bones to protect the lungs and the heart. The heart here between the two lungs. يبقى the lungs surrounded by the ribs to protect the lungs. To protect the lungs. يبقى ribs or rib cage to protect the lungs. We repeat that again. Trachea divided into two small tubes called bronchus. Each bronchus divided into smaller tubes called bronchioles. Each bronchiole ends with small or tiny air sacs or air bags. Inside these air sacs, surrounded by the blood capillaries. Why? To make exchange of gases. To make exchange of gases. After the lung, there is a diaphragm. Diaphragm is a muscle. Is a muscle which separates between chest cavity or thoracic cavity and your abdominal cavity or your lungs or your tummy. Your abdominal cavity or your tummy. So the diaphragm is a muscle which separates between a thoracic cavity or a chest cavity and the abdominal cavity. And also it plays an important role in exhalation and inhalation process. Let's sum up what we said again. We said that the respiration process, it is a process by which we get energy from burning food. It is a process by which we get energy from burning the digested food. It means oxygen plus food. This is called burning or respiration process. Release or produce carbon dioxide gas, water vapor, and energy. But to get energy, we eat and breathe. And blood distributed by blood capillaries. Blood moves inside a thin tube called blood vessels or blood capillaries, okay, to distribute oxygen and food, and they get carbon dioxide from the cell to the lungs to get rid of it. This respiratory system consists of nose. It's preferable to breathe from nose, not mouth, because the nose surround or lined by hair and mucus to filter air from dust and microbes. Also, it lined with blood capillaries to warm air before entering lungs. After that, the pharynx, it's a common cavity between esophagus and trachea. So, at the top of trachea, there is an epiglottis to close trachea while swallowing. Also, there is a voice box under the epiglottis and at the top of trachea. The trachea surrounds or supported by incomplete cartilaginous rings to keep it open all the time, and also it lined with small hair or tiny hair called cilia. And this trachea divided into two tubes, each one called bronchus. Bronchus, two bronchi, one bronchus. Each bronchus divided into small bronchioles. Which ends with the small air sacs called alveoli. These alveoli surrounded by blood capillaries to make exchange of gases. And bronchioles inside the two lungs. These two lungs protected by ribs or rib cage. The two lungs occupy the chest cavity or the thoracic cavity. So there is a muscle called diaphragm to separate between chest cavity and abdominal cavity and play an important role in the respiration process.